thinking it, man. Mechas fight Kaiju.
What's going on, Kaiju United? I am here with Eric McEver, director of Iké Boys. He's done some short films. You may have seen him at G Fest a couple years ago, circling this film around. He's also a teacher, and he's a huge tokusatsu and kaiju fan. Eric, did I miss anything? Do you want to introduce yourself real quick a little bit?
Sure, yeah. So my name is Eric McEver. Yes, the Iké Boys is my first feature film. I'm actually right towards the end of post-production on my second. I can't talk about it, although I do think that, yeah, I think the Kaiju United followers will enjoy it. It's a little bit of a different beast than Iké Boys, but it's a beast none the same. So I'll leave it at that. But yes, and I also am a college professor of film, teach that in various aspects. So the thing about being a college professor is that you're meant to be continuing your research practice, and my research practice is make movies. So yeah, but in the spirit of being a Kaiju fan, let's see what I've got. I guess I do have some goodies. Just this wasn't by design, but bringing my bona
Oh,
fides. This
look at
just
that.
just happens to be lying nearby, so that I feel like hopefully that sets the stage.
Yeah, that's a great issue, and it's an original, I believe, right?
It
It's
was yeah, it
it's
was
not
a
one of
gift
those
from a friend, and
reprints.
I thought that's pretty cool. Yeah, yeah,
That's really cool. That's a great
yeah,
issue too.
yeah. Well, it's also,
Well,
one of the things about that is I just sort of wonder, what the story of of that magazine was. Who read it, who pored o over it, what was their adolescence and adulthood like. So it. I'm sure it has its own stories to tell.
well, we're here to tell your story, and I think that's a
Oh,
great place to start. My first question for you is
yeah.
a lot of EK boys and your own upbringing take place in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And I want to know kind of like your kaiju story of like where did you discover these movies and like how did it affect your youth? Because you mentioned, we'll get into it later, but you were on Bari's Temple of Godzilla and you were
Yeah.
like interacting in these kaiju spaces, but in Oklahoma, which is,
Mm.
you usually think of New York or LA or San Francisco Bay Area as these kaiju hubs. So
Yeah.
tell us about Oklahoma.
It's interesting. I just recently read a wonderful book called Boomtown, which is all about Oklahoma City, and it actually, it goes. I know a lot of the names and some of the people in there. It actually goes into detail about Gary England, who's a weatherman who saved my life from a tornado when I was 12, and actually he makes a cameo in Iké Boys, and my thank you for the broadcast that saved my life as a tornado was giving him a cameo in my film, which I think he enjoyed. But what I get in there is, you don't, I think one doesn't necessarily understand one's own psychology and how place can affect one's psychology, just in a vacuum. But there is a very particular psychology and mindset in Oklahoma. And I think for those of you curious, do check out Boomtown. But there's a very particular kind of underdog mentality. I think Oklahoma is in a lot of ways in the shadow of Texas, which, everything's bigger in Texas, big and colorful personalities. And I think there's a real sense in Oklahoma of trying to prove something, of trying to like make it big, being world class, being top level, but kind of getting overlooked by the bigger, wider world. I don't mean to immediately bring a downer into the conversation, but I was in the second grade when there was the federal building bombing. And I will tell you, so this is my elementary school logic, but I remember immediately popping into my head was, well, that can't happen here. Important things don't happen here. Like we're not in the news here. And so what that speaks to is a real sense of this is not an important place. I'm not important. The things in my immediate surroundings are not important. I want to escape into a more interesting, exciting world out there. So like a lot of little boys, I got really interested in dinosaurs. Let's see, yeah, got Spinosaurus here
Got some
again.
stuff hanging around.
Yeah. Well, it's got to have my space to do my work in. But so an interest in dinosaurs, at least for me, it inevitably led to an interest in Godzilla. And I think the more specific thing is that, it was so born in 1986, not a lot of good dinosaur films coming out. I'll put Jurassic Park aside for a second, but what was available was Godzilla films, and it began at like the local library, the local Blockbuster, old Showa era films, and watched them, really enjoyed them. And what's really interesting is I remember actually it is an Invasion of the Astro Monster, and I had seen it several times, but I remember very specifically there's a scene in there, and it's one of the interior scenes. It's not one of the monster scenes, but characters talking in a house. And I remember the moment where it sort of clicked in my head of, wait a second, this is going to sound, super cute and charming, but wait, their words don't match their mouth movements, which, so we can joke about the dubbing thing, but what that very quickly led to was, wait a minute, these people don't look like the people around me. Wait a minute, these houses don't look like the houses around me. Those trees look different. Like, oh my goodness, like this is this is in a different part of the world. And as sort of, so I guess you could say I was originally drawn in by the fantastical, monster elements, but then what that led to is this realization that, wow, this is coming from a slice of humanity that is different from the slice of humanity that I'm in. And I think the sort of getting drawn into in all its aspects that other reality. So, these are movies with monsters and all of these spectacular, colorful things, but created from a very different cultural vantage point. And I think because my mindset in Oklahoma was like, well, okay, this is not New York. This is not one of the important places where things happen. I think that led to an increased desire to learn about this wonderful other place out there. And you can sort of put the pieces together. I went on and studied Japanese, and many years living and working in and around Japan. So, that may, had I grown up in Los Angeles or New York, that may not have been the case. But I think Oklahoma contributed to the curiosity, maybe a healthy boredom. And yeah, I mean, it's part of who I am. So that certainly shows in the film.
What a great, what a great, well thought out answer too.
Oh, well.
Because I mean, like, I won't dive into my story real quick. I won't do that too much, but like, I kind of feel the same way because I'm based out of Utah. So
Yeah.
like, you
Yeah.
know, yeah, we hosted the Olympics like 30 years ago, and
Yeah.
what else? That's about it.
Yeah.
Second place against Michael Jordan. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So it's relatable, and it's very strong and very prominent in Iké Boys. It was one of the big takeaways that I got from it.
Well, I got advice today. I went to New York University for film school, and well, multiple mentors advised me that you really need to come out of the gate with a film that only you could make. And there's this principle in storytelling that specificity is universal. If you try to make a film for everyone, you'll make a film for no one. And if you try to sort of if it's in and if you try to be in it, that's also a losing cycle because the zeitgeist can change on the turn of a dime. So paradoxically, if you tell something from the heart that comes from a genuine, honest, emotional place, that has a better chance of connecting with people. So, I really tried to be honest about who I was and who I came from. And obviously there's, a liberal dose of fiction sprinkled in, but I think, that to your point, so here we are talking about this, and obviously it's resonating with you and your background. And I think this is the power of film and storytelling is that it can it can connect with people. And I mean, I began this by talking about how seeing these giant monster films on a really visceral level made me realize how big the world actually is. And, as much as the monsters are cool and colorful, I think ultimately the realization about the world and people is the bigger, more important takeaway. So, that's, one of the many gifts these movies have to offer.
So I want to talk just a little bit about your time over in Japan before we
Hmm.
really get into the nuts and bolts of Iké Boys.
Yeah.
Can you tell me, like, your time in Japan? What were the biggest takeaways, like life lessons that
Mm.
that you learned from, you see this place in a movie,
Yeah.
and movies aren't exactly real life, but
Yeah.
like, I'm curious about like some of the life lessons or maybe some of the positive experiences that came out of spending your time in Japan for so long.
Yeah, I mean, and so I guess the first thing I should say is that the experience with Japan is definitely an ongoing one. I just was back for about a month over the holidays. About half of last year was in Japan, partially for the new movie. Um, and so yeah, I mean the story is definitely ongoing. I've lived in Japan as a resident for several, 3 to 4 year stints, and kind of where I'm at currently is it's a third to a half of my time per year. So it's a big ongoing part of my life, and it really has become a second home on multiple levels. So, it's interesting. I think it really is true that human nature is the same around the world. However, culture can be very different, and the more one is in sort of a little bubble with just one slice of culture, the more one can assume that what one thinks is human nature, you can sort of get blinders onto the fact that what you think is human nature is in fact culture. And so many years in Japan, it's been a real object lesson in what the sort of the many, nuances of the human experience. I mean, to state one obvious thing, we in America, we're big huggers. I think almost to a fault. Sometimes I want my personal space more than I'm getting. In Japan, get a hug from someone, that's a big deal. That's kind of an obvious thing of like, okay, so how you physically relate to other people, but um, it's not just the language, it's the way different just even how we sort of talk about expressing ideas. I think in America, so much of it is founded on this idea of openness and expression and self-actualization. And Japan has, thousands of years of history as an island country. And, one can look at that as the sort of the idea of like, oh, okay, well, closed off against outsiders, like insular, blah, 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 blah. And yes, but the other way of looking at it is that, okay, it's kind of in a healthy way, the small town mindset of like, okay, we're in this small space with a few people and a cramped environment and limited resources. Well, we need to get along. And so there's a lot of things to be learned from that. There is, on the one hand, a great culture of respect and politeness and and caring for those around you. I mean, it's sort of Japan is it is a beautiful country and, full of a great deal of kindness and respect. Now, the flip side of that is that a lot of sort of negative emotions get pressed down beneath the surface, and sometimes it can be hard to find outlets for that. I try to be a good friend, and, one of the interesting things with being a good friend and different cultures is sometimes you end up being a safe zone for people to open up to um, in private. So, you know, people are just as people are just as stressed. It just comes out in different ways. And I think that if you talk about the takeaways, you ultimately come away with a deeper understanding of who you are as a person. Um, through understanding the different ways that people can function and interact with one another. Um, but so that's my thoughtful, philosophical, human answer. We'll say though, yeah, it's interesting. I first went in 2007 when Godzilla was in hibernation, and I was thrilled just to see the Hibiya Godzilla statue. We're now living in a golden age where there's a much bigger Godzilla statue added in addition and Hevia and all kinds of other stuff. I mean, I just this most recent trip, a new life-size Godzilla at Haneda Airport.
Yeah.
It used to be a certain amount of like, skullduggery and having to know what you were looking for, and now you kind of, I think in a great way, you can't throw a stick without hitting a Godzilla. So life is good. Life is good.
Yeah, it's good, man. Well, I will pivot a little bit to EK Boys, so we have plenty of
Yeah.
time to talk about it. But so in terms of like, you're a film professor, you have this understanding of cinematic language and all that fun stuff that comes with like knowing and teaching film. I'd like to know if there were any films that influenced EK Boys with their cinematic language besides
Mm.
Godzilla movies. Like,
Yeah.
were there any other like even genre films or just even like films that you've watched in your adolescence or in your college years that kind of influenced your directing?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I mean, I'm super omnivorous in my film consumption, and my top
Me
five
too.
films, my top five films. There's not a rhyme or reason to it. It's like, and these are all number one and all number five. Fantasia, Adrift in Tokyo, Primer, um, Wake in Fright, and Godzilla versus Space Godzilla.
Wow.
Um,
Okay. The
all number one, all number five. I mean, so for Iké Boy specifically, though, it's interesting because I did share the script and the pitch deck with a lot of people, and I got a lot of like, oh, you must love high school movies. And what's interesting about that is that the original inspiration was not actually loving high school movies and wanting to make one. It was reflecting on my own adolescence and thinking, I think there's a lot of real raw feeling here. I think this could be channeled into a movie that people would like. So then it was sort of a matter of like, okay, well, looking at what are movies about adolescence that resonate with me, and I don't know how obvious it is. I mean, I think so I mean, I studied some John Hughes. I took another look at Superbad, which I realized, yeah, that's not really my wavelength. Uh, I really drew a lot of inspiration from American Graffiti by George Lucas, which is another film that is deeply personal, deeply specific. I mean, it's got a very different vibe from the finished film, but more than anything, from Iké Boys, but more than anything, what I took away was just the sort of the rigor and the authenticity of it, and therefore the emotional authenticity. And this also, speaking to this idea of specificity is universal. My father is a baby boomer, and American Graffiti was very much his coming of age film. I think it was interesting. This is, many years ago at this stage, but he was very nervous to show it to me because he was afraid that it wouldn't resonate a generation later because I wasn't cruising the strip and listening to Wolfman Jack and all these things. But I saw it and I was like, yeah, this is what it's like to be a teenager. And so, um, on a in multiple ways, that was a real touchstone for me of like, okay, well, yes, Iké Boys is a movie about tokusatsu and anime and all of these big colorful things, but what it's really about is about growing up. So how can I do my American Graffiti? And that was a real specific touchstone. And then there's lots of other things. I'm a huge fan of Night of the Hunter, and there's a very specific homage to Night of the Hunter and Iké Boys, which no one has got. Um, I don't know. I'll buy someone dinner when they point it out to me. So,
I saw that movie during the pandemic, but I don't
hmm.
remember much from it, so I can't come clean on that bet. But
Well,
I'll
I,
find
I, I
it.
can I can pretty much guarantee that it will it seeped into your nightmares in some form or fashion. It's a pretty spooky one. Um,
Well, that's great because I think on paper, it's easy to just call EK Boys a coming of age movie, and it is.
yeah, yeah,
But I knew watching that it wasn't John Hughes. They weren't jumping in the air and don't you forget about me's playing. Like there's some
yeah.
real heart and soul. And to me, truthfully, it's cool hearing about American Graffiti because to me it felt like 70s genre films where they
Mm,
were deeply personal. They had some
yeah.
things to say within the confines of that genre. So I thought that
Yeah.
was really neat.
Well, I appreciate, well, thank you. That means a lot because that was very much the intent. And I guess my thought is that if it is a movie that young people watch, it'll resonate more because I'm speaking with them, not at them. And that was the hope.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
like to be fair, like I don't know if you can see it behind me, but one of my favorite films back there is Brian De Palma's Phantom of the Paradise.
I was
But
wondering about
like
that. Yeah,
um,
yeah.
like as a guy that has watched a lot of the films from that time, like it oozes out of it. But I
Mm,
think even like someone younger than me can watch Iké Boys and get that feeling of youth.
mm.
It's not like spoon feeding you. It's like you said, it's not talking at you, it's talking with you. I think is that what you said? Something along those
Yeah,
lines.
yeah.
So
Well, I'll tell you, we had so the school we filmed at is actually the school that I grew up at. And again, that was in the spirit of again, making it personal and honest. I mean, the little like stone structure where the boys are first testing out their powers. That's where I first scraped my knee in kindergarten. And I thought, like let's get really open and honest here. Also, like they were just extremely supportive of us for the production. So, in terms of trying to get, bang for your butt on a limited budget, that was hugely helpful. Um, but we had a screening at the school once it was done, and lots of, middle school students, high school students showed up. And one of the most gratifying things was hearing tweens and teens, laughing it up at the jokes and just really appreciating it in the spirit of being young people watching a young person's story. And that really meant a lot.
you've been a tokusatsu fan, a Godzilla fan, an anime fan your whole life. Where did this pitch really start coming from? Like, when did you sit down one day and you're like, "Okay, I'm gonna do it. This is my first feature. Um, it's got to be deeply personal, like my mentors have said. Here we go." Or like, how did this idea like become this
Yeah.
movie?
Yeah. I mean, this is an interesting thing philosophically and metaphysically of where does creativity come from? I think there's this sort of idea that we, even in that word, we create it. And I mean, I don't actually know. I think we could go down an interesting rabbit hole of, the sort of theories about creativity coming from our brains tapping into quantum states. Um, I won't go into that. Although I am deeply interested in that, and I think there's a lot of truth to it. And because I think it's a deeper and definitely the end of the day spiritual process. However, what I will say is that I was working pretty hard and I actually got pretty close to getting a horror film made, which was looking back on it, me making a film with my head, not my heart. And it's actually interesting how far along it got in the process. I mean, as a piece of writing, I'm quite proud of the script and of the idea. I think intellectually it was a good one, but it was coming from the left brain, not the right brain, or not the combination of the two, which is I think where the best things come from. And movie ideas, at least they tend to come to me, or story ideas, they come from those moments of boredom and from contemplation. So I mean, I go running. It's for at this stage more than for my physical health, it's for my mental health. It's kind of, it's a time to get into a meditative state and just sort of images and ideas started coming. And I think I was this isn't a stage where I was doing, for whatever reason, a certain amount of thinking back on adolescence. I'm not sure if I even call it nostalgia, but just of kind of, it was in a place where I was really working to launch my career and I was just trying to think about, well, okay, I don't want to be one of these people who um, like looks back and was like, gosh, like my inner child would sure be unhappy with the person I've become. So I think I was spending a certain amount of time with my inner child and in Japan, and I think just the pieces started to come together through that. And at a certain point, again on various long runs, I kind of the bones of it came together, and I wrote the first draft, and it was terrible, and put it aside. And then about 6 months later, wrote another draft, and it was less terrible. Then, maybe 3 or 4 months, but wrote a third draft, and it's like, okay, I think I'm onto something here. Let me start sharing this with some people. And that was, when things started to get going. Um, so, um, I can point to that, but who knows where ideas really come from? I mean, it's that they're
They just they just
yeah.
happen.
I mean, yeah, it does. I mean, it requires where this is where you need the rigor and the discipline to lasso them and hone them and and write those couple of terrible drafts. Uh, so it's part of it.
Another burning question that we have at
Yeah.
KU is about casting Shaku-san.
Yeah,
Can you
yeah.
talk about that at all and how that all happened?
Well, so I mean, very much a fan of hers, and I will say, in the Millennium series, I always really really like her film. I mean, I should say her films, but the one that she stars in particular. I mean, I just it's like the story, like the vibe, like her in it. I mean, it's sort of, it's an action film, but she's got a really actually sensitive performance as a woman who has been traumatized and is dealing with that and has to sort of, get back on the horse that threw her. And I will just say that actually, it's interesting again, I sort of in the spirit of monster movies being stealth mechanisms for deeper issues in life. So I encountered that movie when I was in high school and, dealing with all the crap that comes from being a teenager. And it was kind of like, wow, okay, like I can identify with this character. And, give me some encouragement. And she's got a big body of work and really admired her. And, so there was that, and then the sort of the left-brained mercenary side of it is that okay, trying to get people in this movie who are famous and marketable and will help attract the people we want in it, and certainly for the Japanese audience, be like, oh my gosh, it's like you've got this person. So, a lot of having a film career, it's a relationship-based industry, and you sort of make your friends, and then you rise up the ranks with your friends. So I'm very lucky. I've got a good friend about my age who's a casting director. Hi, AG, if you're listening, who very hardworking, talented, and at this stage just a dear friend of many years. And we, encountered one another for the first time while in film school, and again, kind of grown up together. And so, we did some back and forth, but this was, at a stage in his career where he could reach out to a really name actress, and it be real. And so so I had a project that I think was a quality project, but he, really sort of knew how to do the legwork, with the agencies. And, so those are sort of the steps along the way. And by the way, I've worked with AG on the new film. We'll be working with him again. But once sort of all of those steps are connected, I do then to sort of bring it back to the metaphysical side of things for a second. I do really feel like, on some level, Shaksen and I were meant to meet. I mean, she's turned into such a dear friend and just really a kindred spirit. And she's just so, so talented and so hardworking and just a very thoughtful, soulful person. So it's kind of funny. I look at Iké Boys now and, playing this, ultimately villainous character. And then I put this sort of and doing such a wonderful, wonderful job with it. And then I put that up in, with the sort of the friendship that's emerged. And it's like, golly, wow, that's uh there's a on the there's a there is and there isn't a cognitive gap, but that's the wonderful world of make believe. I think just very, very highly of her, and of course, I am biased at this stage because she's turned into just a dear personal friend. But she's just a heck of a talented person. Who
Nice.
also, by the way, it's been interesting over the past few years. I think she had when I first met her, I think she kind of thought that the Godzilla chapter of her life had come and gone. Um, but I think it was a wake-up call to her that I was such a Godzilla fan, and like it's I for a variety of factors, including I think her son's interest, she is turned into quite a Godzilla fan herself, and it's been interesting the avid conversations we've had recently about the different iterations of Godzilla the ride, among other things. So she with each passing year gains a deeper and deeper insider knowledge of Godzilla lore. It's been quite a fun process to observe.
That's fantastic. I
I think she's
those
outpaced me in some ways.
oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh man. That would a to be a fly on the wall for those kinds of conversations. I'm sure they're lovely. Um, so another name that I was very surprised to see in the credits
Yeah.
was uh I'm sorry, my Japanese is terrible.
No.
Daisuke Sato, who
Yeah,
directed
yeah,
Howl from Beyond the
Daisuke.
Fog. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, tons of indie kaiju work.
Yeah.
Um, where did you get to bring him aboard this project? Was it just kind of through like seeing like
Yeah.
Howl from Beyond the Fog and some other his other indie stuff, or where did it come
Uh,
from?
no, it actually it's interesting. I guess the you'd know about the brush of God now. Murase-san had taken a shine to me and been very supportive of me for, quite a number of years, and he actually introduced me to Daisuke. So Daisuke was just a friend about the same age, and we were nerding out about the same things. And actually, I did a little bit of behind the scenes help on Howl from Beyond the Fog. And this was a case of we knew each other personally, and I had this film. And again, part of making a film is, who are you friends with, and what. It's not even a matter of calling in favors, but it's a matter of what are the resources that I have at my disposal. And Daisuke was a resource, and hopefully there's a pattern emerging here of like you make friends, you spend time with people you like who are passionate and work hard, and then next thing you know, like that passion and that friendship gets channeled together into a thing. And so yeah, this really was a case of, hey, you want to be in my movie, and use your very cool talents and skills. And so he was. And that was, just thrilling and wonderful. And he brought such an interesting group of tokusatsu veterans with him. I mean, one of my favorite uh, many sort of interesting lessons learned from the tokusatsu portion of the shoot, but the pyrotechnics in it were done with the same rig that been used. I mean, I think on pretty much all of the Heisei Godzilla films, but definitely in use before that. I mean, these rigs they don't come out fully formed. We actually think it may have been built for the very first Godzilla film in 1954. So just the kind of like the sort of literally like those explosions are explosions triggered by the same metal and wiring that you know you've seen countless times. And I think that for me is just very important in terms of it's not meant as an homage or a love letter. Well, no, I'm choosing my words. Like I I'm proud if it's called an homage or a love letter, but less that it's more meant like how can we take the same DNA and create another member of the family to stand alongside those things. And so Daisuke really was instrumental in bringing that to fruition. Um,
That is my mind's a little blown by the by the pyro thing. I
it's
was
actually really neat. So it's something called a shamisen.
mhm.
So, a shamisen it's a kind of a plucked Japanese string instrument. And this sort of this pyrotechnics device, it looks a lot like that. And what it is it's basically individual pieces of metal connected to wires, which are connected to different explosive rigs. And it's really a neat device. It's designed for tokusatsu effects because the explosives are set off manually with like a metal tine, and you set them off manually in timing with what the suit actors are doing. So the whole idea, like this is something very much designed for the, the practical effects, man in a suit world where, and it's, it's a safety thing. It's a dramatic thing, but also a safety thing of making sure the explosions go off at the right time. And so it's a very, it definitely is an art, not a science, because you're getting it, it's this human timing matching the human timing. And I think that sort of, again, this goes to the heart of what makes tokusatsu so magical. When it's done well is it's the handcrafted human touch.
Usually in these productions, there's like an effects director and then like a
Mm.
director.
Yeah.
Did you kind of have that kind of system going with EK Boys, or was it more like collaboration with the guys you brought in?
Well, this is where I do think so. Some of this it actually is innate in I think the job description of the director is that so many years ago I took a workshop at Pixar, and they opened the workshop with a picture of a pyramid, and they say most film productions view the film production as a pyramid, and the director is on top like a king lording it over all of the staff below. And here at Pixar we invert the pyramid. And the director's down here supporting all of the people who are working hard, who are supporting the most important thing, which is the film. And so I really do believe, I mean, you can call it collaboration, but it's also, you can't do it by yourself. Your job as a director is to support and empower people who, and then the result should then hopefully be, greater than the sum of the parts. So for all these things, I try to, defer to the expert. It's all of the different departments have their own areas of expertise, which may I may not have, but I know the movie better than everyone. So try to sort of, I think that a lot of the director's job is sort of give a compass point of like, okay, this is what this shot needs to feel like. This is what this sequence needs to feel like. This is the emotional aesthetic impact it needs to have. Now, how can we get there? And, the more specific, so you want to be as specific as possible, but you also don't want to micromanage, and you also try to want to have you want to give room for people to come up with ideas that you may not have that may be better solutions for the overall goal. So as long as I have the overall direction, like no or as precisely as possible the direction, then it's sort of you be open to, okay, well, what are the new ideas within that? So, for instance, I had storyboarded out, the opening of the tokusatsu sequence where the giant warrior is revealed. I had originally storyboarded out kind of a like almost like a helicopter shot where it's this high angle looking down and you're getting a sense of sort of the warrior from a high perspective. And Daisuke is like, yeah, that would look great with a bigger set and more budget, but what we have, we really need to emphasize the scale from a lower angle. And so, we talking kind of King Caesar is fresh in the mind because I was just rewatching Mechagodzilla the other night, but something kind of like the first King Caesar reveal where it's sort of the low angle. So the specific shot that opens up the sequence is different from the one that I originally had in mind. But because I had set a direction, we had a conversation, Daisuke was able to come up with a solution that was ultimately, well, more feasible, but also better and more appropriate. So this is where I mean, it is a a back and forth. But you do have to sort of set the target as specifically as possible. Like, oh, just do something cool. Well, I mean, that's a very that could mean a lot of different things. So,
It's all over
um,
the place.
yeah, it collaborative, but discerning kind of collaboration, and that was the same thing for the animation and other things too. But one of the many gifts of the job of directing is just how much you get to learn. I mean, I think so. Yes, I went into it a tokusatsu fan, but at the end of the process, I ended up knowing a thing or two about tokusatsu, and just a real profound gift.
That's amazing. And
Yeah.
I mean, like left brain moment, you can take that and put it to the next movie, but like
Sure, sure.
right
Yeah.
brain, it's more of like I think you get a deeper understanding. Like I've talked to a lot of directors and they're like, once you actually make a movie from start to finish, like you get it kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not like you know everything about making a movie per se, but like you get a deeper appreciation for the craft and everything that goes into it. And I think
Yeah.
that's really sweet.
Yeah, well, movies are the sum of, the contributions of many, many people. Like listening to music made by an orchestra, where it's, many different instruments. But I remember when I first learned to play the clarinet, then I started hearing the same concert music in more detail and appreciating in more depth. So yeah, the more you make films, the more you appreciate them.
The animation sequences that are sprinkled throughout.
Yeah.
I think I read somewhere that you knew somebody that had like been doing that animation and then it was a studio somewhere else. And I this is all like secondhand, so please feel free to correct me. I think it was like either Thailand or someone over there that
Yeah.
handled a lot of that animation. Really, really beautiful animation. It really struck out to me. And I mean, I posted about this movie on my socials,
Yeah. Thank
and
you.
the big takeaway in the comments and in the likes and my messages were the animation. They were like, dude, this is like retro, like Get a Robo kind of stuff. Like, what? Where did this come from?
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
this is yet another case of make a movie with your friends and the product's going to be good. But I put it that way, but it's also, sort of the film industry is so social and so much of it is kind of gravitating towards talented collaborators who you want to work with. So the animators, so it's two teams, one France-based and the other Taiwan-based. And in both cases, so the Taiwanese animator, Shaoshan, she and I first connected at NYU at film school. And Arnaud, I connected with him through an animation studio that I worked at in Tokyo for a while. And, the interesting thing about this is pretty much all animators working today have been influenced by Japanese animation because it's had such an impact. Um, and I very deliberately wanted to go with non-Japanese animators because they would be schooled in sort of like this sort of classic style, like in sort of the things that we'd all, and this is the sort of the interesting, the sort of the cultural diaspora of anime. Um, we were all sort of grew up on the same kind of output of Japanese animation, but since none of us were Japanese, we had our own ideas and sort of our own and our willingness to um, like look at this style and sort of get under the hood of what makes it tick, but not just ape it directly. Like, do some new things, bring in some outside influences, and I think that really was the secret sauce for getting it right. Because um, I know some Japanese animators and they're great, but also kind of the anime style has really taken over. Then there's also the practical reality of there's such an anime boom in Japan right now. It's really hard to the good animators have all gotten sucked up by the big name studios. And yeah, that could say some stories about that, which is yeah, it's an interesting time for the Japanese animation industry. But I got to collaborate with these wonderful French and Taiwanese animators, and working animators are the loveliest people, and they will, and we did spend hours talking about cloud shape and color and all of these really granular details that a sort of a less detail-oriented person would just go insane. But if you're interested in visual storytelling, it's one of the most wonderful things. And again, it really, really, really fun. And this is where, I mean, this applies to film broadly, but certainly animation, like one needs to be trained in so many skills to become a good animator. Like you need to be interested in visual theory, in motion, in anatomy. And this is to say nothing of how you began the question, which is the history of animation and styles of animation. And all of these things come into play. So, it's funny because yes, we would nerd out about classic, 1970s, 1980s animation, and also some early 90s. This idea that sort of like, oh, this cursed anime was setting the stage for the Evangelions that were to come. Um, but we would nerd out about that, but then also we would go and nerd out about romanticist painting and light and chiaroscuro and like all of these things that are part of creating an animated image. So it is really many crafts coming together.
You got to do a lecture or something, dude. This
Well, this is part of how the professor gig came about.
Oh yeah. Um, yeah, like real quick, before I bounce into my follow-up, like
Yeah.
one of the animation sequences that really stuck out when I was watching it was when I forget her name. I'm so bad with character names, but she's kind of having the whole awakening right before, the ritual and the sacrifice.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
like
yeah,
you
yeah,
see
Miki.
a
Yeah,
giant, yeah, Mickey, you see that giant head and
yeah,
like the mouth opens and she flies in,
yeah.
and I'm like, there's some there's some more meat to this than just like Voltes 5 or Getter Robo and stuff like that. Like it was really striking to me. It was really
Well,
cool.
well, 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 thank you. So, some of this is going down some, spiritual and mythological rabbit holes with the animators. There is, certainly with Miki's story, a desire to be very deliberate in giving it, religious imagery. I will tell you that particular sequence, just on a technical level, the actress, again, wonderful actress, Christina Higa, strapped up in a harness in front of a green screen for that, which is, so there's, which is inside a fertilizer factory. That was just a weird, weird day at the office. Um, but then the animation, again, and this just goes to like some of the neat layers of the craft. So once she's actually sort of sucked into the mouth and into the abyss, into the void. So the background is black, but if you actually look closely, the background is just kind of stuttering a bit frame to frame. So what that is that's actually paper lightly crumpled with charcoal on it, and then each frame is actually a different exposure. So it gives it this kind of unsettled, almost like sort of embers after a fire kind of look. And again, like this goes by in a flash, but you could just pop up a blank black screen, or you could go to the extra effort and do that. And you go to the extra effort, and it's like, whoa, what am I seeing? And yeah, just all of those little details, they add up.
There's a lot of them in there if you watch the movie. There's a
Yeah.
lot of attention to detail. It's kind of crazy. um,
Well, welcome to the filmmaker's world.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I have my own question when I
Yeah.
was watching
Yeah.
the film, and this might sound silly on paper, but I just really wanted to hear your
Yeah.
insight.
Yeah.
Because you have a lot of dialogue in the movie that's mecha and
Hmm.
kaiju. The mecha fights the kaiju, but then Miki gets this ascended form at the
Mm.
end, and she is
Yeah.
one of the three, I guess, pillars,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
the story. So you have the mecha, you have the kaiju. Can you tell me what Miki's is representing? Is that the more spiritual end of things?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, so I guess if we're speaking in terms of a triad, it's like mind, body, and spirit. And this is actually something that I talked about with the again wonderful actor Quinn Lord, but this sort of the mechanical. It's sort of and that sort of the character of Sean. I think he fears that he's just kind of this all mind, no, no body, no spirit, just a nerd off in his own little world. Vic is this very passionate character and sort of very much like, yeah, like, it's like I want to, get out there and like get the girl and all these things. So, obviously there's more to him than a body, but Kaiju, like big, big, boisterous, and full of life. And then Miki is spirit, so mind, body, spirit. And the design of that character is so obviously there's a lot of layers to it, but it's very much based on, in particular, if you look at Buddhist iconography, the goddess who is kind of one of the chief female figures in Buddhist mythology. And then we added some other layers to it, but is a Buddhist goddess with some layers added on top.
Okay, interesting. Because
Yeah,
I after I finished the movie, I was questioning that a lot.
yeah.
Just like I did get the mind body spirit thing, and I thought that was very well thought out and organic, in the forms that they all take. But that's interesting. That's really cool to hear.
Well, yeah, it's also, I guess the other thing this speaks to is, I mean, I've gotten asked a few times this sort of like, I mean, and it's always welcome, but many times it's like, oh, what's your favorite kaiju film? What's your favorite anime? Like, were there any particular characters that inspired the designs? And I mean, yes, I can talk about that, but the real goal was less for it to be like, oh, hey, that reminds me of blah, blah, blah. It's more like, let's invent characters that sort of could go into the rogues gallery alongside the other favorites you love. One of the strengths of the classic, particularly the Toho kaiju characters, is you can recognize them by their silhouette. And so the goal was less like, oh, let's do an homage to Gigan or whatever, but like let's do another character that you could put them into the same police lineup and they would feel like part of the rogues gallery of usual suspects. And so, yeah, that was, which I hope makes it something significantly more than a fan movie. Um, by the way, not knocking fan movies, there is floating out there a feature-length Pirates of the Caribbean movie that I made in high school. So,
I'm gonna find it when we're done.
pretty proud of it.
I do have your short film on the docket tonight.
Oh,
Um,
well, please enjoy. I'm very,
just
yeah, there's a whole other story there. I am very, that's a whole lot of life went into that too.
the time travel one,
Yeah.
the time travel kind of romance film. I didn't have quite enough time to prep that, but I just really wanted to hone in on Iké Boys. So
Oh, no, no worries.
maybe
Yeah.
when we're done, I'll shoot you a couple off the record questions because I'm
Sure, sure. Or happy to
fascinated.
happy to retroactively add them to this too.
Cool.
There's a certain it's definitely a genre heavy film and has an equal amount of it's equally personal but in a different way. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think we've dived a lot into Iké Boys. We've covered a lot of it. Before we wrap up, I do want to ask a couple of fun things because I didn't want
Sure.
them to get
Yeah.
missed.
Yeah.
Um, for those that don't know, Eric and I first communicated to get him in touch with Barry, who ran Barry's Temple of Godzilla. Barry's a super nice guy. Um,
And a
and
big part
Eric
of my
was,
childhood.
yeah. Part of mine too. And I mean, like carbon dating myself, I'm 27 and I was reading Barry's Temple of Godzilla as a kid.
Yeah.
So there's, generations because I'm Gen Z, but
I'm
uh,
39, so yeah, right
yeah,
smack in the
yeah,
millennial.
exactly.
Yeah.
So Eric got in touch with Barry. Um,
Mhm.
sounds like it was very pleasant. But
Yeah, yeah,
I do want to know on the record, like,
yeah.
is there stuff you can tell us like publicly about, that correspondence with Barry and kind of that personal connection and full circle moment?
Yeah, well, so first thing I say is it's not actually the first time. I wrote him a couple of emails when I was much younger. And again, just to sort of make it clear what we're talking about here is, when I was in elementary school, part of my process of discovering that there were more Godzilla films than the ones I was finding at the library and Blockbuster was on the early internet and on various sites, and it's kind of like, what are these films? And the process of tracking them down, that's very much baked into the story of Iké Boys, and the sort of the website that Sean goes into and does his research on is very like it is a deliberate homage to that era of web pages. And the graphics designer, I to a degree that I think she got annoyed. I was sending her very specific screenshots of Barry's Temple of Godzilla. Um, and so I wanted to, I got in touch with you because I wanted to send Barry a thank you. And I had emailed him a few times over the years. I think even like back in elementary school days to like ask him some questions. So I just, I wanted to send him a thank you, and he was, he was, I think, very appreciative. I get the sense that he had the same feelings he had when talking with you, which was, I think, really honored and really pleased, but also bemused that people would still remember that. I mean, it's interesting. I gather from talking to him that he was, maybe your age, younger than I am now when he was doing that site. And so I kind of think about where I was at, in my life, and then, even just where I'm at a few years later. And so it's kind of like I can imagine it being a strange emotional time capsule to have unearthed of the people like, oh yeah, I remember that thing you did when you were, much younger. But this goes to the power of movies, but also like, I mean, the power of what the internet has become to connect people. I mean, certain goodness knows the internet has caused a lot of problems, but it's not all been problems. And so I wanted to tell him thank you, and I think he appreciated it. I'm also glad, just by all indications, that he's gone on and lived a full life beyond being a Godzilla fan. And it sounds like it's been a good, beautiful life. And I don't know. I mean, I think it's probably become apparent talking here that in making a movie like Iké Boys, yes, there's a lot of tokusatsu fandom that goes into it, but there's a whole lot of other things too. And I think just being a good, well-rounded person is how you create good work. So anyway, in due course, I'd love to buy Barry a meal as well. But in the short term, thank you, Jacob, for enabling an email. Thank you.
So I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to do it. Um, Literally just you know, that 5 minutes or so of my day that it would take to, write Barry, made a whole day for somebody else. And I
Yeah,
think that's
yeah,
something that a lot of people could take note of.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, you open up the news and you see a lot of bad out in the world, but it's not all bad.
there's some
By
good.
by by a long shot.
That's great. Did did you send him a copy of EK Boys, or did you just
I
like
did.
say thank
Yes.
you?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
did.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Did he watch it?
He was in process of watching when we last talked. But that was, I think
Okay.
the holidays were coming up. So
Yeah, I
yeah, yeah,
that's fair. That's
yeah,
cool. That's
yeah,
so cool. I'm eager to hear what he thinks, and
yeah, yeah,
that's so cool. What a small world.
yeah,
It just
yeah,
brings me joy.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Well, that is one of these movies have the power to bring people together. So that's, I mean, goodness, and like, so I mean, we're here talking, but that was talking my friendship with Shaksan. I mean, it's quite a thing to, how these can transcend geographic place and time to enable human connections. That's some wizardry right there.
it is. Well, Eric, I think my last two questions for you kind
All
of
right.
ooh, I was gonna say two, maybe three. That's okay. Um, they kind of all go hand in hand. So the first
Okay.
one, I just want you to, in the most blunt of ways,
Hmm.
sell me your movie. I've seen it, but
Yeah.
for people that are like, "Oh, Jacob's got a new interview out with this guy." Like,
Yeah.
what's your movie all about?
Yeah. Well, it is about a couple of best friends in Oklahoma in 1999 who are basically their escape from all of the doldrums that come of being a teenager is all things Japanese. and they get cursed by a magical anime that turns them into Japanese heroes just in time to save the world at the end of 1999, on the cusp of the new millennium. So big, colorful, funny, but really, it's a movie about finding yourself, being yourself. And there's a lot of spectacle in it. We've been talking a lot about animation and tokusatsu, and different actors from different countries, and just a lot of a lot of humor. But it really, at the end of the day, it comes from the heart, and I hope that shows.
Great elevator pitch.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I left out the Japanese exchange student who has come to Oklahoma to find herself, but that's
Oh, there,
the
yeah,
parallel story running alongside.
yeah,
But
there you go.
I guess in retrospect, I underestimated the length of the elevator ride.
No,
Uh, it's
I'm
been a
just
couple
kidding.
years since I was actually pitching to investors, so I've gotten flabby in my pitching.
I did forget to ask you one thing, so that's kind of
Yeah.
why I said three. Real quick, I'm gonna backtrack a little bit, and I want to know, like, screening your movie at these film festivals,
Mm.
like
Yeah.
you've screened it at like traditional genre film festivals, and you've screened it at like G Fest, where
Hmm.
it's like
Hmm.
these are the people to show the movie to.
Yeah.
What were kind of the differences and similarities in some of the reactions from these screenings?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, yeah. So this is, I mean, a little bit uncanny in that. So G-Fest, a lot of talk tokusatsu, but also screened at uh, quite a number of anime conventions, and there the conversations all about anime. And then the film festivals. So some of this is a lot of what goes on at film festivals is film people get together and talk movies and schmooze and network, and then that leads to more movies. You go to network and do that. So the conversations at the film festivals were, I mean, sure, we talked about Godzilla, but we talked in equal about Night of the Hunter, and and also just talking shop and trading war stories, and so. It's kind of interesting because there's many different aspects to this movie. I mean, it's as much an anime love letter as it is a tokusatsu love letter. But then there's just the movie making aspect to it. So the different venues, kind of the conversations drift to different parts of it. And that's but that's okay. That's that's part of how it should be.
So, like on the recording end of things, my last question, Eric,
Mm.
is I want, and you've kind of touched on it a little bit, but like, what exactly about these stories, of kaiju and mecha and tokusatsu, like
Mm.
philosophically, what do these movies and shows and forms of media like mean to you, like as an
Yeah.
audience member?
Yeah, that's a great question. And been thinking about this on and off quite a bit over the years. And where I've landed with it is that I think ultimately I mean, I think so we as humans, we want the same things out of stories. Like you think about, stories do all kinds of things that doesn't happen in life. Life is big and complex and chaotic and scary, and sure we die, but then other people go keep going on living. So death in its own way is an illusion. Like life doesn't actually end. And it can be very easy for just everything to be confusing and chaotic and scary and frightening. Stories are, I think, one of the oldest human, I'll call them a technology to make sense of life. So there's all kinds of different stories. Now, when you get something like a giant monster film, where those stories are grand and mythic and exciting, I mean, think about it. I just used the word mythic. So, okay, think about the great, the big myths in history about, the gods fighting one another, Zeus hurling lightning from the mountain. These are things that play in the same sandbox. I mean, if we're going to go seeking stories about good versus evil, about, the gods fighting, and the consequences in our lives, we go for big grand things that are bigger than ourselves. And so this is tapping into something that is very, very human. I think this idea of good versus evil, which by the way, I think is an oversimplification of, of really kind of, some difficult, complex things. But I think there is something in a God that's on our side and a God that's not on our side and pitting them against one another. And I think we are really driven as humans to want to find that deeper meaning in the big cosmic battles that are playing around. And I think kaiju films are they're a modern example of that. It's interesting. I don't know if you're a pro wrestling fan or not. I've only recently just in the past 5 years or so, gotten into it. One of my Iké Boys producers, he was like, "Hey, I bet you'd like this." And it was interesting how quickly I did get into it, and it was kind of like, "Oh yeah, this is just same but different with kaiju films. This is larger than life, gods at war." And I think that's what it is. I think it's a modern example of it's the same human forces that created sort of the grand human mythologies of yore. And we have new technology now, and so it's come out in a new form, but it's the same human impulse.
One of the best answers we've gotten in a while. That was great.
Well, I've thought about
But
it a fair amount.
it wasn't it wasn't just the pro wrestling, but that was part of it. No, I'm just kidding. But I off the record, I fell in love with pro wrestling over the pandemic because I was
Oh, yeah.
just watching stuff.
Yeah,
I watched a boatload of movies. We could talk movie shop some other
sure.
time, but like wrestling, it went from me going, this is all fake. Why do I care? But then
Oh,
I was like, movies are fake.
yeah,
Like the
yeah,
theater is fake.
yeah,
Like there's a crazy like not only is there some DNA similarities with tokusatsu and pro
yeah,
wrestling,
yeah,
especially, you can go down the rabbit hole of like
yeah.
All Japan Pro Wrestling, New Japan Pro
Sure,
Wrestling,
sure.
and that whole connection with tokusatsu.
Yeah.
Because like there's even a like an indie kaiju film coming out called Kaiju Bugan 2
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
uh, by I think Taguchi-san is doing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I took it, son, friend of mine. Yeah. Yeah.
Small world.
Yeah. Mm.
You're just like, yeah, that's my friend.
Yeah.
Um, but
It's a
like
pretty small community actually,
it
but
is,
yeah.
it totally is.
Yeah.
But like in the initial announcement, he was like, yeah, All Japan Pro Wrestling is going to be working on this film with us. And I was like, there it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's very fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, golly. Well, I mean, yeah, this probably could be a public story, but I suppose, well, yeah, th this could go on the record since I'm not using names, but I went to see, pro wrestling, live with a very close friend who he grew up with it. So it's merely become an enthusiasm of mine over the last few years. For him, it's his tokusatsu. So we went out to a bar afterwards, to kind of debrief. Next thing we know, wrestlers show up. So my friend buys a round of Guinness for Sheamus and company who are there, but he insists on it coming to them anonymously. And I was like, buddy, this can't be. So I dragged him out to the wrestlers and said, hey, this man bought you your drinks, friend of yours for many years. And of course, he was, red-faced, uh, very embarrassed by it. But I was glad that I don't know. I wanted to make sure that they knew where their drinks came from, and I will just say that really sweet crowd of people. So uh, anecdotally, and obviously we didn't want to bother them. They were just enjoying their evening. Uh, but they were delighted for the drinks and just very sweet people.
That's good. That's good. Well, on the recording end of things, Eric, I did
Yeah.
want to just thank you for hopping on and having a lovely hour-long chat, breaking
Oh,
down
yeah.
your movie and talking about cinematic language and American graffiti. It's been again on the recording, and it's been quite lovely, and it's been a great talk.
Well, the pleasure was mine, Jacob, and thank you for enabling this. And yeah, happy to come back anytime.